Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It's 9 o'clock on a Friday, which means it's time for a review show revisited. This is where we revisit reviews that we've done over the course of the last few weeks and months, either on the Craig and Ryland review show, 5x5s, or review show specials. And what we do is we take the tricks we've reviewed out into the real world to see if performing them in the real world gets as good a reaction as we anticipated, or on the flip side, if the trick sucked as bad as we thought it would. It's a good chance for you to see how the tricks we reviewed work in the real world. And we always put a commentary track over the top as well, so you can see our thought process, either myself or Ryland, depending who's performing. You can see our thought process during the actual performance as well, because that's what we're all about here at Magic TV, trying to put out content that's going to make you guys better performers. So, we're going to be looking at two tricks this week, and the first trick is coming up right now. So the first trick we're going to be looking at is the Stroop Test by Nicholas Mavresis and David Jonathan. Now, Nicholas Mavresis and David Jonathan are two creative behemoths. David Jonathan has released some of my favorite tricks. Toucan is one of my favorite A-cans that I've performed many, many times in the real world now. And maybe I should do a review show revisited on that. I think I will at some point. But David Jonathan snaps, all these tricks, so good. So David Jonathan is incredible, and Nicholas Mavresis has released some awesome magic over the previous weeks and months, and he always smashes it out the park every single time. You put the two of them together in a room and you bring a trick out that's got both of their names on it, you're probably going to have gold. And myself and Ryland reviewed the Stroop Test recently. It came out with Penguin Magic, and it is a really nice packet trick. But when you say packet trick, it's not like a normal packet trick, because with a normal packet trick, it's normally really visual. It's obviously a magic trick. The Stroop Test comes across as a mentalism thing, and I'll tell you when I'm using it. I'm using it in two situations. And the main situation I'm using it in is as a lead-in to doing some mental magic. So the presentation I'll use is, hey, we're going to try and do something in a minute, but I need to make sure that you and I are psychically in touch. So we're going to try and do something. Have you ever heard of a Stroop Test before? And I kind of do it as a lead-in thing. And I find as an opening piece to a mental magic set, it gets really great reactions, because people don't know what to expect. And then at the end, when you hit, they kind of freak out. And it then allows you to go into something else that's got a mentalism flavour. And a lot of the time I'll go into something with digital force bag or cognito or something like that. But this is my lead-in trick. And I talked about on the channel, there's a couple of different outs that you might experience during the course of this trick. And normally with outs, there's one out that's weaker than the other. And one thing I thought when I was doing the review is that there was one out in Stroop Test that was obviously much weaker. Having now done the routine, I disagree with myself. I think that both outs are really strong for different reasons, and that's something you can only figure out from performing this in the real world. Now, sometimes with these review show revisited, I force myself to perform these tricks in the real world so I can see how they work, so I can get footage and content for you guys. That's not the case with this. With this, I've actually wanted to take it out. I've took it out into the real world so that I can actually see what it looks like, and I have been super impressed ever since I started doing it. Stroop Test has kind of divided the internet. And there's some people that say, oh, it's terrible, and there's some people that say, oh, it's brilliant. My friend Nemi Phoenix really just doesn't care for Stroop Test. And that's fine, and that's well and good. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. My opinion is that it is really good. So I'm going to start off by playing you some footage of me doing this in a restaurant. So this is me performing this in a restaurant sort of setting. I want you to go and have a look at this. It's me with, I think there's about 7 or 8 people sitting around watching me. There's a couple of kids, mainly adults. And you can see how I'm using it. You can see that lead in. So let's have a look at that right now. I want to do this with you, if that's okay, Sam.
Yeah.
But psychically, I need to make sure we're in touch. Because it'll only work if you and I have a connection. I feel we've got a connection, Sam, but I need to make sure. So I have something that will test our connection, and this is actually a test designed to test cognitive ability. It's called a Stroop Test. Has anyone heard of a Stroop Test before? Yeah. If you haven't, Google it. It's actually a really interesting thing to do. The whole idea is that you have like lots of different colours, and each colour is written in a different colour, and it kind of baffles your head, right? So what I want you to do, Sam, we're going to test your cognitive ability. You look like a smart guy, but we're going to test you. Not that smart, obviously, Sam, but you look like a... I'm going to go through the cards one at a time, and as quick as you can, you need to read out the word. So in this case, you wouldn't say yellow, even though it is yellow, you'd say red. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Go.
Red, orange, pink, blue, purple, green, yellow, brown.
That was good. I mean, you need to clap for that. That was pretty good. But people always struggle on the second part of the Stroop Test. The second part is you don't say the word, you say the colour. So in this case, you wouldn't say red, you'd say yellow. This is what kind of gets people's heads. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Go.
Yellow, green, black, red, brown, purple, orange, blue, yellow.
That was a little bit slow, but that was still really good. I thought that was great. But what I've just done, if you and I have got this connection, by me going through that process with you, I've just programmed your brain. Do you feel programmed?
Yeah.
I feel I've programmed your brain. Now there's 8 cards here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I want you to give me a number between 1 and 8, and we'll look at the colour of that number.
6.
Would you like to change your mind?
No, 6.
Okay.
Fine.
So we've got 1. Let's do it this way, because fingers and thumbs. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes? Which is green. Yes? If you'd gone one more, it would have been yellow. If you'd had one after that, it would have been brown. If you'd had one before, it would have been purple. You literally had a free choice of number. Do you feel like I forced you on green?
No, that's fine. I'm happy.
Because you see, I said this was a cognitive test, but as you see, it's also a psychological illusion. And you could have stopped at any colour, and you stopped on green, right?
Yeah.
The back of this card is green. Now I saw your eyes look to the rest of the packet, and I know what you were thinking. You were thinking, yeah, but that's yellow and that's brown. Now, if you'd stopped on yellow, that would have been green. If you'd stopped on brown, that would have been green. Red would have been green. Orange would have been green. Pink would have been green. Blue would have been green. Purple would have been green. Every single one of these is green because I programmed you to stop at that exact same point. Which is good, because that means that psychically you and I are in touch, which means that we can now do the next trick. Now, one thing I like about the Stroop Test is it's very, the hook line works really well. Whether you've heard of a Stroop Test or not, and you've heard of the concept of a Stroop Test, once you explain what it is, the people you're performing it for really get into it. They're kind of like, right, okay, look, I'm going to pay attention now. I really want to make sure I know what's going on here. Right, okay. And they try and do these cards as quickly as they possibly can. And then when you do it again and you get them to read out the colours, they try to do it as quickly as can. And everybody gets into it. And it's a really weird thing. You don't normally get that with a magic trick, but they're kind of buying into it before you even realise that there's any magic involved in this, which is really cool. Really, really cool. Really like that as a concept. And the other thing that I've noticed sometimes and this is kind of a mentalism-y, mental magic style thing, the way that it's actually worked. As I say, it's not framed as a normal packet trick. And a lot of the time with routines like this, you need people's attention. You need to kind of focus people's attention on what you're doing. You can't have absolute quiet, for want of a better, you can't have absolute noise. It's normally kind of a pipe and slipper style moment. One thing that I found with the Stroop Test is it can be performed in almost any environment, and people just kind of buy into it. And you'll see that. I'm going to play you a video of me performing the Stroop Test at a Halloween party. So this is a Halloween party, at Halloween, obviously. I think this was like a day or two before Halloween. And it's like is it a company party? I think it's a company party, and everyone's dressed up. And I'm doing this Stroop Test here. But you can hear it's very noisy. There's loud music. There's a lot of people standing around. But, you know, even though it's really noisy, I've still got everyone's attention, which is really interesting to me. So I'm going to play that for you right now. Have a look at this footage.
Molly, nice to meet you, Molly. I'm Craig.
Hi.
Put your drink down for me, Molly. Have you ever heard of a Stroop Test? You see, I want to do some mind reading with you, but I have to make sure that you and I are psychically in touch. So we're going to do a Stroop Test. This is a Stroop Test. Look it up, Google it. It's an actual thing. It's designed to test cognitive ability, to see how quick you think, basically. You can all follow along. What's your name again? That was the first test. Well done, Molly. So here we go. This goes down here. We'll get back to that in a minute. I've got a whole bunch of different cards. Each one has got a different colour written on it, but each colour is in a different colour. It's designed to confuse your brain. We're going to see if we can do something kind of weird here. Let's try this. First of all, step one of the Stroop Test. As quickly as you can, I'm going to go through the cards. I want you to read out the word. Not the act. So no, don't say yellow, say red. Yeah. Okay, as quick as you can. Go.
Red.
Very good.
Orange.
Well done.
Pink.
Yep.
Blue.
Well done.
Purple.
Well done.
Green.
Yep.
Yellow. Brown. Red.
And back to red.
Oh my God, that was
No, it wasn't. That was good. Give me a boot. That was amazing. Now this is the hardest part. Now you have to say the colour, not the word, but the colour. This is where it gets really tough.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Go.
Yellow. Green. Black. Red. Brown.
Yep.
Purple. No, thank you. Orange. Blue.
You're doing great. That is amazing. Now, believe it or not, this is not just a cognitive experiment, it's also a psychological experiment. I have just programmed your brain. I will prove it to you. There are 8 cards here all together. Give me a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Any number you want to. Are you sure? Do you want to change your mind? Let me just go 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's green. That's the actual, not the purple, that's green. That's the colour, green. That would have been orange. The one before, if you said 5, would have been brown. Each one is different. Could I have possibly known you would have ended up on green? If I could prove to you that I knew you would end up on green, would that be good? Hold your hand out for me. I really didn't know you'd end up with green, which is why this has a green back. Now I know what you're thinking. They've all got different coloured backs. That's a sceptical face right there. I wouldn't cheat you if you'd said this one, that's got a green back, 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 that's got a green back. You could have ended up on any colour. You ended up on green, and every single one of them has a green back. You look very confused. Ow. Well, what we've just done there is programmed your brain.
Okay, so let's wrap this up. I am going to up the score for Stroop Test to 100%. I've probably performed it at this point about 40 or 50 times in the real world, and it always gets a great reaction. I love the hook line, I love the premise, I love the method, I love absolutely everything about this. And as I say, its power, in my opinion, is as a lead-in to a mentalism set. I've tried to do it as a standalone piece, and for sure it works as a standalone piece. That's not a problem at all. But I do think it works better as a lead-in to kind of a bigger mentalism set. So yeah, let's have a look at that footage with a commentary track over the top, and then we'll move on and we'll look at the second review.
So as you can see, this is a really noisy, really busy party. This is kind of a Halloween party. Everyone's dressed up for Halloween, obviously. And that's why the Stroop Test is such a great trick in this environment, because there's no angle issues to speak of at all. Now, I always do what they recommend that you do on the tutorial, which is introduce it as a cognitive test. But I do like to tell people, Google it, look it up. Now notice, once I've drawn attention to that particular card, I put it out the way and I don't bring attention to it anymore. Anybody who's got the trick will know why I do that. I think the important thing to understand here is don't run if you're not being chased. A lot of the time, magicians that I've met are very concerned about that sort of moment, but you really shouldn't be. Now, the other nice thing about the Stroop test is it does not require a table at all. Even putting that card down to one side, a lot of the time I'll put it in my top pocket. You don't need a table at all. And as I said when I was speaking earlier on, the cool thing about this trick is everybody is invested. Look at the girl to the left with the upside down crucifix on her head. You can see that she's like really invested in what's going on, and they really get into it. Even before any magic happens, just presenting this test to people really gets people into what you're doing, which is a dream when it comes from a presentational aspect of a trick. So, but the other thing that this is doing, which is really interesting, and this is part of the genius of Nicholas Mavresis and David Jonathan, is you're showing all of the cards. People know that there's nothing going on. People know there's nothing weird going on. And now, I think it's very, very important, and if you've got the tutorial, you'll know this. I think it's very important that you make sure that, or as much as possible, that you go for the out that's presented in this trick. And if you haven't watched the tutorial properly, please do so, because there's certain things that you can do to make sure that 99% of the time that you end up with that out. And to be honest, that's my favorite out, which is why I always want to kind of engineer it in towards that kind of thing. Now, the other important thing to note here is you're not always going to get killer reactions. You're not always going to get people like freaking out. And this is a perfect example. You know, I met a magician a little while ago, and he said, "What's wrong with me? I perform and people enjoy it, but they don't scream like they do with David Blaine." And, you know, that's fine. Sometimes people just don't react like that. It's not always the case that people react like that. So in the case of this trick, you know, I'm performing this really cool trick that, like, is basically impossible. But, you know, you can see her reaction is kind of subdued. But you can see she's impressed. I mean, you look at her and she looks at her friends, she looks at the cards, she looks at her other friends, and it's kind of like, how? You know, which sums up exactly what she's thinking. And I think the important thing to take from this video is don't always expect to have David Blaine-style reactions. It's not always going to happen. So this is a very different environment to the first video that I did a commentary track over, because this one, I've kind of got everyone's attention. They're invested in what I'm doing. This was part of a set that lasted about, I think, 25 minutes, half an hour. Ryland had done a set to warm them up that was like 15, 20 minutes. So these guys are super invested in magic. So it's a very different situation to the Halloween party. And you can see that with the reactions. I mean, when people are invested in the magic that you perform, and they're really focusing on what you're doing, they're going to appreciate the impossibility of something like this a lot more. And that's something to consider. I mean, the Stroop test is not a super visual trick. It's not like a super visual packet trick. But as I say, that's why I like to use it as a lead into a longer mentalism performance. Anyway, again, like with the video that I just did the commentary track over, you can see that it's just an instant, what's the word I'm looking for? It's just instantly gets people's attention, gets people in to what they're doing. And I like to encourage that, and I say, hey, that's really good. Give them a round of applause. Well done. You're great. Kind of like lots of positive encouragements. And you'll hear the patter line a couple of times when you watch this performance. I talk about we need to make sure that we're psychically connected. We need to make sure that you and I are psychically in touch. And that patter line kind of makes a lot of sense when you're using this as a lead-in to a longer routine. Now, you'll also notice when I'm actually performing this, I'm looking around at everyone else as well. The problem when you're performing a routine where there's only one spectator involved is if you're not careful, everyone else will switch off. So what you want to try and do as much as possible is get everybody else that's watching involved in the performance as well. You don't want to do it so it's just you focusing on them and that's all. Wherever possible, you want to get everyone else involved as well. Now, the final thing that I can talk to you about the Stroop test, and this was kind of covered on the tutorial, but it's worth noting, is the beat when you're doing this revelation. So first of all, you point out the impossibility of what you're about to do. You point out that you could have stopped anywhere. One more card would have been this, one less card would have been this. And then you're going to turn that card over and you're going to show them that it's got a green back. And so when you do turn that card over and it's got a green back, that's kind of the first beat. And people are kind of not really that fussed about that. Now, notice what I do when I show the rest of the cards. What I do is I turn them over one at a time, and every single time I turn over a card, I say a couple of things, and it kind of makes it more impossible, and it builds up to a crescendo at the end. That by the end of this whole thing, and you know they've seen it all happen. And notice I leave the cards in front of him so that he can examine them, but also notice that he doesn't examine them. You know, some very important things that you need to be aware of here. Bottom line, Stroop Test is absolutely fantastic and well worth getting.
Okay, so the second review that I'm going to be looking at today is Celebrikey by Matthew Wright. Marvellous effects. So Matthew bought this out a little while ago now. I think it's been on the market for 2.5 months. And myself and Ryland reviewed it on the Craig and Ryland Review Show. Gave it a decent review and said it was pretty good. I said that it would make a really good everyday carry routine. Now, I've performed this. Since I reviewed it, I've actually gone out and performed it a few times at weddings. And the reason I've performed it at weddings is because I thought it would make a really good kid trick. I thought it would be a really good trick that you could perform for children. Because kids love superheroes, and Batman is a very common superhero that a lot of kids would know and love. So I thought this will work really well with kids, and it did work really well with kids. And for the first 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a month, I just performed it exclusively for kids at close-up gigs where there's adults and kids and they want me to do something for the kids, because I thought this is a great kids trick, and I wasn't really performing it for adults. And then when I did the review show Revisited, and I thought, well, I want to put Celebrikey in here, I thought about just performing it for a bunch of kids. And then I thought, no, because I want to give this a fair crack and I want to actually perform it for adults and see how it goes for adults. And I did it at a couple of gigs at Mix and Mingle, got really great reactions. You know, these days, superheroes are really popular. You know, back in the day, back when I was a kid, and I loved superheroes as a kid, I was the geek for liking superheroes, right? I was the geek for liking superheroes. Now the geeks have inherited the earth, the nerds have inherited the earth, because now everybody knows about the MCU, everyone knows about the DECU, whatever it may be. Everybody knows about all this stuff. And you could ask somebody to name 10 superheroes and they would do so very, very easily. Whilst I think about 10 or 15 years ago, you ask someone to name 10 superheroes, after Spider-Man, Batman and Superman, they'd probably struggle. So it just shows how popular superheroes have become, how they've become part of modern pop culture. It went really well. And then I thought, well, okay, let's try and do it in an actual banquet situation. So I went to a gig, and it was a gala dinner, charity gala dinner. And I performed this probably 2 or 3 times at tables, and tables of 8 or 10. And I thought, let's see if it works, because it's a very small prop. The revelation is very small. And one thing that I said in the review, I said it probably wouldn't work to large audiences. It probably wouldn't work to a big group of people. It wouldn't work in the environment in which you're about to see the footage. And part of this show is to try and see if I'm right or wrong when I've done a review. So I thought, well, the only way to do that is to actually go and do it at a big table and see what the reactions are like. So this is the 3rd big table I've done it on. I was very surprised that it plays, even though it's quite a small revelation, it plays really big. People immediately know what's happened because of the reaction of the person holding the key. So let's have a look at that performance footage right now.
I'm going to get you to help me, is that all right? And it uses a key. What was your name again? Sorry? Emma. So I'm going to show you something with the key. I'm going to use the key here. What I want to do is I'm going to put the key right here in your hand. Okay? And I want to squeeze it tightly. Turn your hand over. We're going to out a little bit. We'll get back to that a little bit later on. Okay? Now, are you a fan? Because you look like a fan, to be honest, sir. Are you a fan of superhero films? No. If you're not, that's fine. If you're not, that's fine. There's a reason I asked. I'm going to show you that reason right now. I have. Yes. It's when my wife and I went on our first date. It was meant to be 7 o'clock. She stood me up for 15 minutes. I digress. We're going to do something here. So yeah, I have on my phone a list of 100 random superheroes that I got off the internet. Now, I didn't know there were 100 superheroes. Some of them are quite common, and then when you get to the bottom of the list, it's ones that you've never heard of before. It turns out there's thousands of superheroes, but we only know of a few of them. And I always, if I ask someone to name a superhero, generally as a rule, they go for Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, one of the common ones. I like to make it a bit random. So I've got 100 different superheroes on my notes page. You're going to commit yourself right now, so give me a number from 1 to 100. 32, are you sure that's my IQ? 32, yeah? So here's my, I want to show you, here's my notes page there. Do you see it? And do you see superheroes about halfway down? Open up superheroes and tell everyone what is at 32. Say it out loud so everyone hears. Batman. Now tell everyone, is Batman at every position on the list? Because if it is, that's not magic, that's stupid. Is Batman everywhere, or are they all completely different? All different. He could have ended up with anybody, but he ended up with Batman. And before we did this stupid little trick, I gave you a key. Do you remember? Now, this is the weirdest thing you'll ever see. You're not going to believe this. Let me watch this. I'm just going to pull it out, and I want you to check. Because now, look, that key, the end of that key, has actually, have a look at it and show everyone. That has actually turned into the head from Batman. Look at that. You're going to pick any. No! Isn't it weird? Look at that. You want to video it? That'll make a nice Instagram post, won't it? There we go.
Oh my god!
No, you can keep that key. There you go. Oh, you don't want it. That's fine. I was thinking of the Invisible Man. That's what happened there. That's the
What did I do?
So there you go. You can see that the reaction was really good. Now, there's a few things that I want to point out. The first thing that I want to point out is that you saw in that video footage the woman taking a picture of the key. That happens a hell of a lot. For some reason, when I do this routine, and this is something that was very unexpected, when I do this routine, people want to take a picture of either themselves holding the key, or they want to take a picture of the key, and they immediately want to put it on Instagram, which is fantastic because it allows me to say, yeah, don't forget to tag me in. And I punch in my Instagram and I go, hey, do you notice something weird about that? You're not following me. And I hit the follow button. And it's a great way to get followers, which is important, or at least I think it's important from a marketing point of view if you want to get more gigs. So yeah, I mean, that's the first thing. I didn't expect that. And it shows that people are finding it like a really kind of bizarre thing that they immediately want to take this picture of this key. But they do. So, you know, that shows how kind of impactful it is on the spectators, if that makes sense. The other thing, you'll notice I'm not following what Matthew Wright suggested in terms of the Force. Anybody who's got Celebrikey, you'll know how he suggests using the Force. I'm using Digital Force Bag. For me, Digital Force Bag is the best way of doing it. I've got a list of 100 random superheroes, and it allows me to force this in a very organic way. I love Digital Force Bag for that. DFB is absolutely great for that sort of thing. And, you know, a lot of the time, by the way, I haven't even needed to bring Digital Force Bag out. Because if you perform it to adults especially, one question that I've started asking is, hey, are you into superheroes? Do you know the difference between Marvel and DC? And if someone goes, yeah, I go, oh, fantastic, no problem. Are you more of a Marvel fan or a DC fan? And if they say DC, I go, brilliant, let's use DC. If they say Marvel, you go, well, let's make this interesting then. If you're more of a Marvel fan, let's use DC. And so I get myself to DC and I say, look, name a DC character that everybody would know. And if they name something else other than Batman, and it's crazy the amount of times they name Batman, and if they do, I've got a miracle. But if they name somebody else other than Batman, I just go, you know what? Everybody names that person. That's why I've kind of done this. I've made my list and I then bring the phone out. So it allows me to kind of do the Force without even needing to bring the Force into play, if that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's a great trick. It's a great trick. Can't knock it at all. I've done it many, many times, and don't fall into the same trap as me. Don't think that it's just a kid's trick, because it is not just a kid's trick. And also, don't be worried about, one thing I was worried about is at the beginning bringing this key out and showing it, but not having it examined and put it in their hand. I thought people might want to actually spend more time looking at it, but they don't, because it's such a nice display of the key, and you're showing the key at the fingertips and everything looks compos mentis. You put that into the hand, they don't think twice. And then when you pull it out and you've got the Batman and killer moment right there, that immediately becomes an offbeat. When you pull it off and it's Batman, I bring somebody in and say, have a look, it's Batman. And that's when I do the switch. So it's when other people are coming in and the whole thing's really busy, and I have a reason to switch it to show this person. And as I say, immediately then they grab it and they do Instagram photos and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm gonna up the grade to 100%. I think it definitely deserves 100%. Having now performed it in the real world, it's something I'm going to carry on performing. But more importantly, it's a great everyday carry item as well. I've actually got myself 2 sets of these Celebrekeys, one that's in my close-up case, but I've also got one that's on my regular keychain. So that when I want to go into this, I can just take those 2 keys off as one, sort of palm one, hand the other one out to them, and go into the routine. So yeah, it's incredible, really commercial. Let's have a look at that footage with a commentary track over the top, and then we'll wrap everything up.
We're looking now at Celebrikey, and the first thing I want you to note is that obviously I'm going to be taking the gimmick key, I show it around very fairly and put it into the spectator's hand. Now, something that you need to be aware of when you're doing this, where somebody's going to be holding something for a long time and you don't want to look at it until the end of the routine, you want to turn their hand over. And a lot of magicians ask me why you turn the spectator's hand over. And the reason is, if their hand's not turned over, it's very easy for them to open up their fingers and have a look at what's inside, depending on the type of spectator they are. If you turn the hand over, you'll notice that you'll see them turning the hand over, and you can kind of stop them and go, whoa, 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 make sure that you keep that, I don't want to touch it, make whatever excuse you're going to make. Now, the other thing that I want you to notice about this video is I'm spending an awfully long time pressing buttons on my phone. And the reason is, as I went into the trick, I realized that I had my superhero set in Digital Force Bag set up for a completely different superhero, because I was doing a completely different routine earlier, and I hadn't set it up for Batman. So I had to just kind of kill time while I set it up. And luckily, you noticed that the girls pointed to the tattoo of an Apple Watch on my wrist, and I was able to kind of banter about that. And kind of that's the important thing when you're a gigging magician, when you're out performing in this sort of environment. You have to understand that things are going to go wrong from time to time, and things aren't going to go as you expected. And the important thing is to make sure that you're kind of not just looking flustered, not looking like everything's going wrong, but you've got to make sure that you are kind of almost like a duck is how I would describe it. If you look at the duck swimming along a lake, they look so elegant. A duck or a swan, they look so elegant as they glide along the lake. What you don't see is underneath the water, they're paddling like crazy. And it's the same thing with being a magician. You don't want people to see you're flustered. You don't want people to see that you've made a mistake. You just want to make sure that you look like everything is as it appears to be. So, now, he's picking his superhero, which is obviously going to be Batman. And honestly, even though Matthew Wright went through a few different forcing ideas on the project, I do think Digital Force Bag is absolutely the way to go with this. Now you come to the finale. Now notice, I've actually been holding out that key from kind of very early on in my right hand. And I switch it right under her nose, as if I'm turning it over to show her the other side. I've seen people in the past, when they want to actually bring something out their pocket and hold it out, they do it just beforehand. There is absolutely nothing wrong with stealing that thing way earlier on and holding it out, because then when you do need to kind of bring that object in that you're palming, you've stolen it out ages before. So there's absolutely not an issue there at all. It's worth noting that, to be perfectly honest. And the way that I vanish that key at the very end of the routine, that's actually how I like finishing this routine. I like finishing the routine by making that key vanish, because it just kind of brings everything full circle, and the invisible man line works really well in that context as well.
So there you go, guys. That is another review show revisited in the bag. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I said to you that last week, I'll say it every single week, these shows, but it takes a long time to put together. We have to go out and get footage in the real world. It then takes a lot longer to edit than most other videos. So please let me know if you want me to carry on doing these. It'd be so much easier to do another video that's just done directly to camera. But if you guys like these, then we will continue to do them. Don't forget, if you want to see more videos, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Tell your friends to subscribe to Magic TV. If you know somebody in Magic and they haven't subscribed to Magic TV, tell them to have a quiet word with themselves. I'm going to be back again tomorrow at, well, we're coming up to the weekend. There's 8 videos going on over the weekend here at Magic TV. On Saturday at 12 o'clock, you've got an honest trailer. 2 o'clock, you've got a short. 6 o'clock, you've got a live. 9 o'clock, you've got to talk Magic. And then on Sunday at 12 o'clock, we have a Q&A. 2 o'clock, short. 6 o'clock, live. 9 o'clock, we've got a review show special. It is the place to be if you like Magic this weekend right here on Magic TV. I will see you again. Thanks very much for watching. My name is Craig.